In this video, we're going to be talking about federal agency decisions. So there are different types of agency decisions that you might be asked to look for or that you might need to find for a particular research issue. And we're going to look at these three types: advisory, formal, and informal adjudications. So the first type of opinion we're going to look at is an advisory opinion. These are issued by an agency, usually in regard to a question asked by an official, a practitioner, or a member of the public, and it's usually contemplating a particular activity. So it often interprets a statute or a regulation on a hypothetical set of facts, and it's not binding on the agency, but it can be helpful if this is all you can find that's similar to a question that you have. So the agency is telling somebody else in their particular factual situation what the outcome would be, but you could look to it for a sense of how the agency would act. In this one, we're looking at the U.S. Department of Labor advisory opinions, and you can see a description of the request. They want to know whether the delivery of a summary prospectus satisfies a regulatory requirement. The next type we want to talk a little bit about are formal adjudications. Formal adjudications look more like the decisions we're used to seeing at the court level. They're quasi-judicial in nature. They'll have witnesses, there's a record of the proceedings, there's a written decision. These decisions are usually published and made available to the public. Usually we see an administrative law judge issuing the initial decision, and that decision can be accepted or reviewed by a decision of the commissioners or the board. The one that we're looking at here are ALJ decisions of the National Labor Relations Board. They're generally not binding on the agency, but they can be persuasive. Agencies also make thousands of decisions every day, so these would be more informal type adjudications. So I'm giving you one example here, which is a consent disposition between or before the Federal Trade Commission with a party that they had investigated. And other types of informal decisions or adjudications are decisions made on, for example, federal student financial aid or initial Social Security disability determination, that type of thing. So these are usually not, they may not be written, or they may be written as the consent one that we're looking at here, and they're often not publicly available, although I was able to find one to show you. So this chart is going to be a little bit difficult for you to see on the slideshow, I'm sure. So that's why I gave you the URL that you could go take a closer look at this. But this is a really good example of an unfair labor practice, the process of how an unfair labor practice charge would go through at the NLRB. So first the charge is filed, then there's an investigation. Then the regional director makes a determination whether there's going to be formal action. So already we can see that there's an informal adjudication at the top level. If the director decides to issue a complaint, that complaint is issued, and then there is a formal hearing by the administrative law judge. After that, that informal hearing is either adopted by the board, or the board can recommend other disposition. So that's that internal review process. And finally, it can be reviewed, this decision can be reviewed after you've gone through all the agency steps. The review process would be to take it to the Court of Appeals, and they could either enforce, set aside, or remand all or part of the case. And finally, of course, U.S. Supreme Court review would be possible. So for the review process itself, you would need to look at the Administrative Procedure Act, the enabling legislation for the particular agency, and also that agency's own regulations having to do with review of decisions. And this is just one example from one agency of how it works. So that's the introduction to the decision-making process of the federal agencies. In the next video, we're going to take a look at where we could find these agency decisions.